This is Steve with Pro Tools PC, and on this video I wanted to talk about installing a third-party interface for Pro Tools. So the actual method of how to do this, the exact process, it can vary a bit from interface to interface. So I just kind of wanted to go on a general overview of doing it and things to look out for and getting Pro Tools set up. So in this case, I just have a little Behringer UMC 202 interface. I have the drivers here already downloaded. It used to be common knowledge with the older Avid like 00 series interfaces and such that you would have to run the drivers before you plugged in the interface. It seems like with a lot of these newer interfaces that has changed a bit. So in this case, for instance, right now I do not have the Behringer plugged in. So if I try to run the installer, it actually gives me a warning window that the setup requires that the device be plugged in. So let's go ahead and cancel out of this, and I will plug in the interface. And now let's run the driver installer. Okay, so it was installed. So a couple things to look out for is typically when installing third-party interfaces, it's going to install some sort of a control panel, something to control the device from. It's typically going to be accessible here in the taskbar after you install it. Otherwise, say you might have to actually go to your control panel and it be present somewhere in here, like say in this case the 11 rack is accessible from this menu. So from here it's telling you basically how the device is sitting currently. So status, 48K, input output. This is a small interface, so there's not going to be much to choose from channel wise. Buffer settings, actual digital control of the volume levels, etc. Then the other important factor to look out for is back to the control panel in the sound settings. Well, what you can also do quickly before I move on is you can launch the device manager, and under sounds and video game controllers you should see the interface installed in here. So if there's a yellow question mark beside it or something that looks like that little mark there on my wireless card, it's saying that something's wrong with it, proper driver's not installed, disabled, something like that, that something's actually wrong with it. So here in the sound settings in the control panel, we can see now the Behringer is present in here, and it's saying that it is the default device. By default device, that means the device that Windows is going to pick as its device to play back sounds through. So whether you launch Windows Media Player, iTunes, any or should I say most playback software that's controlled through Windows, this would be the default device. Now, Pro Tools does not like this whatsoever. So let's just leave this for right now, and let's have a look at a couple things. With Windows as the default sound device, and with the buffer settings on this device, the ASIO buffer size set to 2048, let's try to launch Pro Tools. Now we can see it's taken an extremely long time to launch Pro Tools, or if it will launch, something is obviously wrong. So as I pointed out before we started, we got two possibilities. The interface set as default in the sound settings in the control panel, and then we also have this buffer size here, which is a problem. So it finally launched. And let's just go ahead and let's try to create a session here real quick. And that is a clue that Windows is using your interface as its default playback device, and it won't hand over control of the interface to Pro Tools, which Pro Tools needs. So there's just a little bit of conflict going on there. So the first thing I would recommend from here is going into the control panel to your sound settings again, and select a device other than your interface to be the default playback device for Windows. So in this case, I'll just choose speakers, which is actually the headphone output on the back of my motherboard. Also, what I would do here is to disable the interface from being the default playback device. What this means is that the device will be still able to be used by other software. It just won't be available as a default playback for Windows. So you can still select it in Pro Tools or other software like that as your playback device. It's not disabled like it would be if you went into the device manager and disabled it there, where it would completely disable it. So if we click on disabled here, we can see that it completely disappears from the list. Now you can right click on any of these here and just hit show disabled devices, and then it'll come up again and it'll just say disabled. So from here now Windows won't access it as the default device. So let's go ahead and launch Pro Tools again. So let's create a track. Okay, so it's already hanging. Something's not. We got the little Pro Tools not responding window up here. Let's go and kill Pro Tools. And let's change one of the settings here. So let's drop the buffer size. Let's launch Pro Tools again. Okay, we see immediately how much faster Pro Tools launched and came up to our dashboard by dropping the buffer size. So now let's go and try to open that session, which was on the G drive. Okay, the session launched right away. Let's try to create a track. Okay, it's already being a little more responsive than it was previously. Let's just try to hit play and see what happens. So something to take note of with a lot of interfaces, if you go here in your playback engine to change your buffer size, other buffer sizes are not going to be available to switch to. So what you actually have to do is two ways to do it. I guess the safest way would be to shut down Pro Tools first completely. So close out the session, close out Pro Tools, and then change the buffer size to where you want it. In this case, that's still a supported buffer size now. And then when you relaunch Pro Tools will now take a hold of that and revert to those settings. So we can see it launched much quicker. So launched right away. We try to do playback, anything like that, it's fine. So, we can drag some audio into the session real quick. Let's just grab that. And so, yeah, we can see playback here. So, yeah, everything is working now. But say you wanted to set this up for a tracking session and you wanted to change to a 64 hardware buffer, depending on the interface is exactly how you'll go about it. This interface, I get a warning that the streaming mode won't work. So I would actually change to minimum latency. That window goes away, but then I get the warning window that I must restart Pro Tools. So save, that's fine. and then restart Pro Tools. Okay, we're playing, and let's check our playback engine, and it's set to a 64 hardware buffer. So I hope that helps anyone out that might be dealing with that. If you have any questions, anything like that, feel free to contact us. And thank you for watching the video.